Cardboard, is it safe to use in the landscape and garden? And if so, what are the proper applications for doing so? In this video, we'll look at peer-reviewed data to see what it says about using cardboard in the landscape. Can we use it to suppress weeds? Can we use it to extend bed lines? Is it safe to use around the house? What types of cardboard are safe to use? We'll go over this and so much more. Hi, I'm Dr. Tom Warren, and you're watching The Plant Doctor. Let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about when using cardboard in the landscape and garden is it safe to use? Well, I've read a lot of peer review on this topic, and the consensus seems to be it depends on what type of cardboard it is. And really that just boils down to what type of ink is on your cardboard. So for example, I have just a plain piece of cardboard here. It has a little bit of ink on it right here, just a numbering 62875, whatever that means, and that's it. There's no other ink on this. And so the consensus is if there's no ink, or if the ink is a matte finish, it's a dull color, that is a plant-based ink and it is safe to use. So if you have cardboard laying around and it has a dull ink on it, you should be okay to use that in your landscape and garden. What you want to try to stay away from is glossy colored finishes like this. Now, I'm not saying that this Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar is bad for my yard, but the consensus is that if it has a shiny sheen finish to it like this, you probably want to stay away from using this in your yard. The main reason that we want to stay away from using anything with a lot of color or a high gloss on the box is sometimes with these bright colors, we're using heavy metals to make these colors, and that's not necessarily good for your soil. Also, when you see a sheen on cardboard like this, it means it's probably covered in some sort of wax or plastic-based compound, and those take longer to decompose in the soil and they can linger around. And so it's just a good rule of thumb, if you're going to use cardboard, stay away from the shiny stuff and the bright colors. It's okay to use the dull stuff and no colors. Cardboard can be an excellent weed suppressant. It's going to suppress weeds from the bottom up and from the top down. So what do I mean by that? Any seed that is underneath your cardboard, if it germinates, it's not going to be able to get sunlight and it's going to die. Also, any seed that comes in on top of this cardboard is not going to have soil contact, and if it does germinate, it's not going to be able to root and it will also die. So if you have a problem area in your beds where you have weeds but you don't want to use chemicals, one thing you can do is lay down some cardboard, put your mulch back over the top like so. In that area, you're not going to have to worry about weeds. Are there nutrients in cardboard? Well, if we were to take a sample of this and send it off to a lab and let them run it through mass spec, what we would find out is this is less than 1% nitrogen, less than 1% potassium, less than 1% phosphorus. And those are the three primary nutrients that plants need. What it lacks in those three, it is abundant in carbon. And having lots of carbon is vital if you're into composting and trying to take your grass clippings and your leaf litter from your yard and break it down and reuse it as a mulch or a topsoil in your lawn or landscape or your garden. And with this concept of carbon-nitrogen balance, that brings us to our next topic here, and that is a concept called lasagna composting that you can do with cardboard. So I have some grass clippings here, rich of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, all those fertilizers that we put on our lawn and garden. Those are actually still in these leaves. We can use those to our advantage, but they're going to break down very slowly in and of themselves. If you put something with a high carbon ratio in it, like cardboard, we put a base of cardboard down, we can rake these grass clippings over the top. We're going to layer this about maybe 2 or 3 inches. It doesn't have to be very exact. We take another piece of cardboard, lay it on top, rake some more grass clippings on it, and the rate that these grass clippings are going to break down will be much faster. Therefore, I can take that nice, rich, organic material, put it back in the yard, and our plants will benefit from it. Another thing we can do with cardboard is extend out bed lines. I have an issue here, as you can see, and this is a shade issue where south is this way. I've got trees that block the sun. As they continue to grow, I have to bring this bed line out 2 or 3 feet every 3 or 4 years or so. And say I don't want to spray chemicals on my yard to get rid of this grass, one thing you can do is you can take cardboard and just lay it on top of this grass, and then either take a brick or a stake to weigh this down so the wind doesn't blow it away, leave it down for 2 to 4 weeks, remove the cardboard, and the grass that was underneath it will be gone. One thing we need to understand about cardboard is that it's hydrophobic until it's hydrophilic. And that's just a fancy way of saying that it doesn't like water until it does like water. And what I mean by that is if we put water on this cardboard here, you can see it just runs off. But slowly but surely, that water will seep into the cardboard, and once that starts, it really holds on to a lot of water. And this is important for several reasons. If we were to use this as a weed barrier, say that I cut a hole in this cardboard and planted a small plant, and I'm like, oh, the cardboard is going to keep the weeds from growing around my plant. That is true. However, we need to have an understanding that if it rains, that rain's not necessarily going to get to that root ball initially. So anytime you're using cardboard as some sort of weed suppressant around plants that you want to survive, make sure you wet the cardboard thoroughly so there's some moisture in there, so when it does rain, the rain just doesn't run off. Another thing that we can use cardboard for, especially once it's wet, is a slug and snail trap. So I have all these hostas here behind me, and snails and slugs love hostas. So the thought process behind this is snails and slugs need dark, moist environments in order to survive long term. So we're providing them a house here. So we can lay this on the ground. Slugs typically feed early morning and late afternoon. They're looking for cool, dark places in the middle of the afternoon. So you could come out here after lunchtime, pull this back, and simply remove the slugs and snails that are underneath. Something that I do a lot with cardboard is seed starting. So what this is just an Amazon shipping box that I cut in half. I filled it with some potting mix. We put some seeds in it, and we started some vegetables and nothing but cardboard. And it did a pretty good job. So obviously you can see it began to break down on the edge here, but the plants had already rooted in. They were ready for transplant long before the cardboard started to break down. So if you're looking for a way to reuse your cardboard, not necessarily use it in the yard, but an application for gardening that you can use is to use it for seed starting. Another great option for cardboard is to use it as a pathway in your landscape or your garden. So this is going to help prevent you from tracking mud into your house if you're in an area that stays muddy all the time, or you don't have the means to have pavers or something fancy where you're not getting mud all over your shoes. Look into using some cardboard in those high traffic areas, and it'll keep the mud off your shoes and also keep the mud out of your house as well. An area that I would highly recommend you do not, I repeat, do not use cardboard is anywhere close to a structure like your house. The reason is cardboard is primarily cellulose. There's a lot of cellulose in here, and that is what termites feed on. So if we were to take this piece of cardboard, pull back the mulch, lay it down on the ground, put the mulch back on top of it, it rains, the cardboard eventually gets wet, saturated. That is the perfect environment for termites. We've invited these termites right up against the house, and that's just an opportunity for them to get into the house. My recommendation is if you're going to use cardboard for any reason, use it out away from structures, use it out away from your storage buildings, use it definitely out away from the house, anywhere that there's wood that you need to preserve, don't use the cardboard. And that brings us to the last two topics that I want to talk about. And the first one is, how long does it take cardboard to break down in the garden or landscape? And there's really too many variables involved to give a specific answer. I can give you a range. It can be a couple months up to maybe a year and a half. It depends on how much moisture your cardboard is exposed to, the pH of your soil, what type of insects live in your area. All of these variables are going to determine how long that cardboard stays present in your landscape or your garden. And lastly, is cardboard right for you? I can't answer that question for you. This is really an individual question that you have to answer to yourself. So all I can do is provide some information for you. Assess what your yard looks like. Do you have a termite problem already? Do not use cardboard. Do you have an insect problem like with earwigs? Probably don't want to use cardboard. Do you have a weed problem and you don't have those insects? Cardboard might be a viable option for you. Do you have muddy areas in your yard that you like to walk around, but you don't have a means to keep your shoes from getting super muddy otherwise? Well, you might could lay some cardboard down in those areas so that you can move around the yard and not get your shoes muddy. It really is just what's happening in your yard this year at this moment, whether or not this is appropriate for you. If there's a way that you use cardboard in your yard that we did not go over in this video, please share that with us down in the comments below. I would love to learn something from you, the viewer. Guys, as always, thank you for watching The Plant Doctor. Until next time, happy gardening.